Hi everyone, I've been off YouTube for about 4 years at this point, but I wanted to make a video about commissions and why they cost so much money. Back in the day when I was actually checking my Tumblr regularly and posting cosplays to it, I got a lot of asks about commission prices for Disney princess cosplays on a budget, particularly between $75 and $150. However, the person inspiring this video is someone who kept sending me asks about his classic Cinderella ball gown for $100 or less. And that's what this video is about. I'm going to challenge myself to make a Cinderella ball gown with a $100 commission budget to show you exactly what that would look like. I'll also talk about what an actual Cinderella commission would entail at a timestamp listed below in the comments if you want to skip ahead and learn more about the commission process. So your budget is $100. When you're paying for a commission, you're paying for the materials required to make your costume, and then you're also paying a craftsperson for the time and labor required to make it for you, as well as shipping costs to get it to you once the costume is complete. I'm going to try to keep this flexible, but let's say we have $35 to spend on materials for this costume, and then it'll cost at least $16 to mail it to you when it's done, but let's round it up to $50, which leaves another $50 worth of time spent on labor. Which means at this point that we'll have about 3 hours and 51 minutes left to work on it. Let's go shopping. By the way, one thing I'm not counting here is the time spent both in the brainstorming process, which would take at least half an hour, and the time and gas money spent shopping for materials. I'll explain more later, but if I counted those, that would chop another $28 out of your budget, leaving a little less than 2 hours to make the dress. Unfortunately, I went about $10 over budget. Materials cost me $45.42 because the fabrics I was planning to use my 50% coupons for were already on sale, but for less of a discount. This means I'll only have 3 hours and 4 minutes to work. Let's get started! Cutting out fabric usually takes a really long time, between locating the pattern pieces you want to use, making alterations, drafting any necessary pieces from scratch, and then actually cutting them out. This step took me only half an hour because I used a simpler bodice pattern to minimize the pieces I needed. It took me almost an entire day to cut out all the pieces I needed for my yellow bell gown. For the skirt, to save both time and money, I'm using a rectangular pattern instead of a circle. I prefer to make gathered circle skirts or princess dresses for that ultimate floof, but they would require 3 to 6 times as much fabric and thus as much money. I have no idea what I'm doing with the sleeves or the skirt poofs, but I don't really have time to worry about it because the costs don't allow me time to make a mock-up and figure it out. The poofs are attached with safety pins to save time and also snaps. I could have sewn them into the waistband with the skirt, but it didn't occur to me since I was prioritizing making them easy to remove so the parts can be washed separately by color. Normally I do a lace-up style in the back of the bodice for that uber princessy look, but I can't do that here because it would take more time. Ideally, I would press the seams and add boning, sewing channels into the seams for it to fit, but I can't do any of those things because I don't have enough time and the budget didn't account for the boning. I have 1 minute and 40 seconds left on the clock. And I am... God, this is probably on a flattering angle. I just finished ironing the bodice and the skirt poofs, and I think that might be all I have time for, but let's see if I can fit anything else in. Time! And this is your $100 Cinderella. It's actually not as bad as I expected, but that's mostly because I cut so many corners in an effort to make a finished wearable piece. In addition to the other things I specified during the process, the skirt wasn't hemmed, but it's important, obviously, to hem your skirts to make sure they don't turn into fray monsters, especially when they're around your feet and you run the risk of stepping on them a lot. I could have made a prettier closure for the bodice. Usually what I do for Disney princess dresses is I make the bodices more like corsets, and you lace them up in the back. In this case, I had to use a zipper instead, and obviously I did not find a zipper that matched the color of the fabric perfectly. It doesn't matter that much because it's in the back, but it does visibly clash. The seams would have been pressed, which is really important, and you should always do that when you're making a costume. What pressing your seams does while you're sewing is make sure that the seams sit flat on your body instead of puckering and ballooning and looking kind of awkward. I didn't have time to iron everything. This mostly affected the skirt, where there's a giant crease going around the entire width of it. There are a lot of steps that go into commissions that I didn't consider for the sake of this challenge because I knew it would leave me with no time to work on this and make it a lot more complicated than it needed to be. To reiterate, my labor rate is $13 an hour. I used coupons. Something to keep in mind is that not all stores have coupons, and that even if the store does offer coupons, they might not have them at the right time. The brainstorming period is when you think about what materials you need, what patterns you're going to use, how you need to alter things, how to make things work. How do you get the final product that your customer wants? This usually takes between half an hour and an hour. Sometimes it takes more. Sometimes you realize along the way that you haven't been doing it quite right and then you need to rethink it and do it again. And then the time and gas spent, it took me an hour and a half total to shop for materials today and probably $2 in gas. I also picked up a pattern on sale today for about $2 and it wasn't an accurate pattern. I do have a lot of things on hand already that I'm always happy to use for commissions, but when a commission requires me to go out and buy something I don't already have, that's going to be tacked onto the price. So I had a ton of technical difficulties and now it is dark. All the different factors put together would add up to at least another $31. So that means you have $20 worth of labor, which I'm pretty sure is an hour and a half to make the whole thing. So the TLDR is, even with the constraints in place, this is going easy on you. This is a lot more than what you could realistically get at a $100 price range. Here's how I would make an accurate Cinderella cosplay, how much it would cost, and why. Brainstorming again takes at least half an hour, if not more, so let's say $8. Gas and time spent shopping is at least an hour and a half both ways, so let's say $22. Patterns we need are not always on sale when we want them to be, that's another $18. Bodices usually take 1 to 2 yards of fabric to be made successfully, maybe more depending on the pattern. They also usually require boning. I use spiral steel boning for Disney cosplay, so let's say that adds up to about $7. And then grommets to lace up the back as well as ribbon would be another $6. Materials for the bodice should be about $38 alone. If I wanted to make the skirt for myself, I would probably want to make it out of a 1.5 circle skirt and probably with a nice sheer chiffon overlay like what I did for my belle dress. So that means you need 300 inches of the satin on the bottom and 300 inches of the chiffon. On top of that, you need at least 2 yards of fabric for the little skirt poofs. I don't know what they're called, I'm sorry. So you're going to need at least 18 2/3 yards of formal fabrics at $187. Cutting out fabric takes a long time, especially for huge cosplays with a lot of pieces. So let's give ourselves about an hour and a half to be safe. I'd estimate that the bodice would take about 3 or 4 hours at least to make, between sewing the pieces together, creating channels for the boning to go into it, inserting the boning, pressing all the seams, and then also inserting the grommets by hand and lacing the whole thing up. The skirt should actually take a really long time despite having relatively few pieces and being pretty simple, if only because hemming circle skirts takes forever. The skirt takes about 6-8 hours depending. Let's say it takes about 2 hours to make the skirt poofs. After making the ones today, I don't think it would take that long, but it would definitely require making a mock-up to get them to drape just right, which would account for the additional time. We're looking at a minimum of 14 hours of labor here, which adds up to $182, but I'm willing to bet it would take even longer. Then when it's done, it'll cost at least $17 to ship to you. Your grand total for a full commission quality Cinderella ball gown would be about $499, but I'm going to round it up to $500 just because I know it would probably take extra time to work on. So no, I unfortunately can't make you a Cinderella dress for less than $100. It's just not doable considering the quality that's meant to come with commission work. Commissions cost so much because you're paying artists and tradespeople for their handiwork in a hobby that already costs a lot of money, even if you're just doing it for yourself. Materials are really expensive, or at least they add up. And life is so busy as it is that everyone's time is super valuable. They deserve to be compensated fairly for using that time to provide you with a service, especially with the years it takes to pick up the skills that they're using to help you. If you can't afford commissions over a certain price, that's totally fine. I'm not shaming you for not having the resources that you would ideally like to have. But I want to raise awareness about how commissions work and why they cost so much money, because there's so much back and forth about how cheap or how expensive things should be. The people who take commissions work really hard to make sure that you're getting the best end product that you could get. And the great thing is that we live in a day and age where it's possible to go online and buy cosplays for pretty cheap. Taobao and Alibaba are options. I know I've seen other stores that sell Western media costumes, including Disney princess cosplays, and Etsy and Store NB are always up if you need to do a quick sweep to see if someone's selling something affordable. The low prices a lot of requesters demand would basically be like asking a stranger to pay out of pocket to make you a custom product, which is something that requires a lot of time and energy. So please just remember that and try to be considerate moving forward. People are doing their best and they're charging whatever they need to get by. I hope this video has been helpful and informative for you, and I hope the rest of you at least got a kick out of the monstrosity that is that Cinderella dress. And I'm a little disappointed that it's not as bad as it could have been. I don't know, the commissioner who kept asking me about this is still out there, but if you want this dress, I will give it to you for $17, just the cost of shipping, because I have no idea what I'm gonna do with it. And if anyone wants to use it for Disney Princess Metaton, that's an option. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time if I make a video in the next 4 years. Bye!
So this is love. Mm-hmm.